That's where the Andover boys were. My group walked en masse to the Congregational Church and then walked back again. Of course, a church is a community of people, but we took no part in that aspect or any aspect of that church's life. Our focus was on showing up and on what we would wear. You could have gentlemen callers after church for a 2-hour visit, but these callers could not be from Phillips Academy. Phillips boys could only come on Saturdays. Brooks boys and Exeter boys were allowed to visit either day, but the Exeter boys had to get an additional permission of a Dean Kessler at their end. At least that's what our handbook states. And interestingly, there's no mention of boys calling from any other place. These Sunday or Saturday callers would first have to arrange for the visit with the Abbot student, but getting in touch with us wasn't easy. We had one phone at the end of the hall in each dormitory. In Draper, that meant as many as 30 girls would be sharing one telephone. Boys, or our parents for that matter, could call us between 7:45 and 8 a.m., between 7 and 7:15 p.m., or 9 o'clock to 9:25 p.m. each evening. And per regulations in the handbook, our conversations were limited to 2 minutes. Back to the possible callers. These boys could only visit if they had called the Abbot switchboard to make a reservation by 6 o'clock Friday evening prior to the Saturday or Sunday visit. Finally, your name and your caller's name would be posted in the front hall. Too bad airport security isn't this tight. It had to be an organized, confident, and motivated young man who navigated that maze. Reading back through the handbook explains why I never had a caller in the 3 years I was at Abbot. For those who did have callers, there were two choices: sit in the formal drawing room on the first floor of Draper, or walk around the circle. That was it. No going anywhere else. Where would we have met these boys who would call on us? Those of us who liked to sing had Fidelio concerts with Brooks, Exeter, and St. Paul's. We had tea dances afterward. We were matched up by height. Once during our 10th grade year, we had a concert with Phillips, but there was no dance or social time afterward. Clearly, enormous energy was expended to keep us apart. During the week, we had athletics in the afternoon. There was some free time before study hall started, and we could take walks, always with another girl, and always on a prescribed route. That route went nowhere near the Andover campus. Or we could walk downtown, but we could only go into shops that were on an approved list. My sister Wheezy, class of '67, remembers we couldn't go downtown on Wednesdays, a day she claims the Andover guys took their laundry to the laundromat. If we saw a boy downtown we knew, we could speak to him for 2 minutes. Teachers, Miss Menard and others, were posted downtown to time our conversations. Of course, I didn't know how we'd ever have gotten to know any of these boys with whom we might have had a 2-minute conversation. We didn't see men and women working together. We never even saw them together. I had no male teacher except Dr. Seiden, a minister who came and taught Bible studies once a week. The other men we saw were the maintenance men who worked outside. Even how we spent our free time in the dorms was clearly controlled. Victrolas and radios could be in your room if okayed by the house mother. According to page 24 of the handbook, you could play records between 3:45 and 4:45 on pleasant days, and between 2:15 and 4:45 on stormy days. There's no mention of partly cloudy or whatever we do there. We could chew gum in the rooms, but not in the corridors. We could never leave our bedroom in just a nightgown or pajamas. We had to wear a bathrobe, and so it went through the handbook. There were so many ways to make mistakes. Of course, there were no counselors or mental health professionals on our faculty. The house mothers, in their own ways, filled in. These women were of grandparent age, widowed, divorced, single, some caring, and each carrying her own emotional cargo and life story. We would regularly receive gratuitous and often unusual messages from these women. Some of us remember being called together as a group in May of our 11th grade year and being told that spring was a bad time for men. And another favorite, Men can be wicked. I find this an interesting counterpoint to the Andover film we saw where I guess Dean Benedict told the guys that be careful of predatory females. So we were set up to have big trouble together. This woman must have delivered her men are terrible and dangerous message to a more critical audience 2 years later. My sister remembers this house mother was fired right after her spring speech. By the time my youngest sister graduated from Abbott in 1971, all house mothers, as we had known them, had been replaced by young couples, some with children, but that was not our era. What complicated messages about men we received. To me, looking back, it felt like we were positioned as victims, objects men could act upon if we weren't protected. Left to our own decisions, we would obviously make bad choices. We were taught not to trust ourselves, and certainly not to trust boys. This extreme watchfulness and control on the part of the administration undermined self-esteem. In our inexperience, boys were extremely exciting, or we were petrified of them. More gutsy women than I just went up the hill after dark by climbing through their open windows. How exotic that seemed to me. Who would I have visited if I'd done this? From Abbott, I went to Pitzer College in Claremont, California, where we could have men in our rooms 24 hours a day, total freedom. Oh my, I was beyond unprepared. I remember going to an English class freshman year and discovering I was the only girl in a class of 40. There I was with 39 wicked men. I was petrified. I dropped the class. The term adjustment issues didn't begin to cover my angst in college. How did that period of time work out for all of you? At Abbott, we didn't talk much about what was going on in the outside world. The Cuban Missile Crisis happened during the fall of our 10th grade year. I found out about it from my father on the phone. I don't remember any formal discussions about it with the faculty. There was one black and white television in each dorm, which meant all the seniors and senior mids shared that one TV in the mailroom of Draper, and we are not talking big screen TV here. I do remember being allowed to watch the Beatles' American debut on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that was great. Kennedy was assassinated during our 11th grade year. We had been rehearsing for our Thanksgiving service in the chapel when we heard the news. Activities were canceled for the rest of the day. Then we were left on our own. No discussions with faculty or anyone. I remember classmates in tears. We were scared. People were calling their parents and sobbing on the phone. It was a frightening time, and we were left alone to deal with it. In the culture of those years, self-control was paramount. The operating ethic was, if you didn't talk about something, it would go away. In our formal education, in the classrooms of Abbott, we talked a lot. This was an intellectually alive place to be. I've never been with such a bright group of peers. Of course, to paraphrase the words of Maureen Barbieri from her book Sounds from the Heart, we were females at the margins of our textbooks, usually reading about men. If we read about adolescence at all, the main character would have been a boy, like Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye. Many days we had more homework to do than time to do it in. We were in a double bind with our 9:30 lights out policy, 10:15 senior year. Many nights we ended up working in our closets, hunched over portable typewriters, pressed up against our shoes, trying to make as little noise as possible so as not to wake up our house mother, who in my instance lived below me, and boy was she trouble. It never occurred to us to explore this problem of unrealistic bedtime with the administration. We silently worked around it. There was intense academic competition. This was fueled by the way we were ranked by quarter on every report card. I spent my 3 years sliding between the third and fourth quarters of our class. The message was clear. I must be a third to fourth quarter kind of person, a sort of academic bottom feeder. The shame of that. So many classmates have mentioned the damaging feel to the ranking system. In a midnight forage into locked cabinets in the library in 1967, some students, and corroborated by Miss Menard to me later, found the working papers used to figure out the quartiles for their class. Students' grade averages had been worked out to the third decimal.